These NFL stars were geniuses on the field, but super dumb with their money. Every player on this list managed to lose millions. But how many million? Let's find out. Dan Marino. Dan Marino had one of the most successful careers in the NFL. He played for 17 seasons, 9 Pro Bowls, and scored an incredible 420 touchdowns. He almost made sure he became a household name thanks to his appearance in the Jim Carrey classic Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. But while that career move worked perfectly, his other attempt to capitalize off the film industry failed spectacularly. He thought he was making a great investment when he bought 1.6 million shares in James Cameron-backed company Digital Domain Media Group. It looked like a surefire thing. They were involved in the special effects for blockbusters like Titanic and Apollo 13 and were even the brains behind the Tupac hologram. What could go wrong? A lot, it turned out. The company's stock prices collapsed in 2012 and the company went bankrupt. It was a disaster for Dan, who apparently lost about $14 million as a result. It's pretty unfair. It's not like he did anything stupid. Who wouldn't have invested in a company like that? Luckily, he's doing fine now. He's working as a broadcaster for CBS and HBO and is back with the Miami Dolphins as a special advisor. Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp was a defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Oakland Raiders, who earned a breathtaking amount of money throughout his career. If you put together just his 3 NFL contracts, he earned $76 million. That's without including his annuity, pension, assets, endorsement and book deals, speaking gigs, and reality show appearances. He was rolling in cash and he knew it. There's no doubt he enjoyed spending that money on lavish items, like a lion skin rug and 240 pairs of Nike Airs. He took it all one step too far with a real estate business venture. In his defense, he was trying to build affordable housing in St. Lucie County, which is kind of a noble thing to do. But it didn't work out. He eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2012. The court documents revealed he owed $6.7 million to everyone from the IRS to the mothers of his 4 children. Lucky for him, he now has a coaching job at Colorado, which comes with a $150,000 annual paycheck. Sure, he'll never get back to his former wealth with that salary, but it's way better than most other broke players. Terrell Owens. Hall of Famer Terrell Owens proves that attitude is everything if you want to hold on to your cash. He was always known for being a little cocky as a player, and that spread into the way he handled his money when he started making pretty risky investments. The $2 million he invested into an entertainment complex in Alabama that went bankrupt was just one of his many mistakes. He bought so many houses and condos that he racked up a combined mortgage of $750,000 every month. His behavior was also affecting his personal and professional life, costing him even more. On the personal side, he was paying child support to 4 different women. Maybe try using protection, Terrell. It's a lot cheaper. And he was living it up while he was meant to be playing, too. You might remember the time he posed on the star in the Dallas Cowboys stadium. Those crazy touchdown celebrations led to several fines, all adding up to $150,000. Over those few short years, it seems he lost almost all of the impressive $80 million he earned. He had a few things that we'd hoped would keep him afloat, like a podcast and a wine label, but it looks like neither of them worked out. At least his clothing brand is still going. We'll have to hope that that's enough to keep a roof over his head. It wouldn't be enough for the player we're looking at next. Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson is sometimes called one of the greatest running backs in football history, and he sure was paid enough to match that acclaim. Over his career, he earned almost $103 million. We guess he thought he had more than enough cash to cover some investment loans. But when the investments failed, all he was left with was debt. To pay off these loans, he unwisely took out even more loans. It sounds unbelievable, but those loans combined so his interest accumulated to $2,200 per day. Imagine owing that much interest before you even consider the original debt. In 2021, the courts decided they wouldn't take pity on him and ordered him to pay $8.3 million he owed. With all that debt, it's no wonder he still hasn't officially retired, even though he's almost 40 years old now. At least he never committed a horrible crime like the next player on this list. Michael Vick. The former Falcons quarterback had a hugely successful career, with some sources claiming he may have earned as much as $118 million throughout his time with the NFL. However, he put that money into the wrong place and really paid for it. His horrifying crime was financing an illegal dog-fighting venture called Bad News Kennels, which was operating on his property and across states. We won't go into how badly the dogs were treated because you really don't want to know. But Michael was named as a participant in these cruel activities as well as a financier. In 2007, he was sentenced to 26 months in federal prison. While inside, he also filed for bankruptcy, revealing to the world that he was now at a staggering $17 million in debt. To make amends for his cruelty, he's now a spokesperson for the Humane Society. His financial situation may be improving too. He joined the Atlanta Legends as an offensive coordinator and works as an analyst and expert for Fox Sports. We hope he learned his lesson. Mark Ingram Sr. We all know running back Mark Ingram II, but did you know his dad was also a pro footballer? He was a wide receiver for the New York Giants when they won the Super Bowl in 1991. His impressive football career didn't translate to his personal or financial life, though. After his retirement in 1996, he was caught attempting to defraud the IRS. He was also charged with money laundering. He was originally sentenced to 7 years in prison and ordered to pay several fines. But it all got even worse when he didn't hand himself over to authorities when he was meant to. That earned him a few extra months in prison. You'd think he would have learned his lesson, but in 2018, he got on the wrong side of the law again. He violated the rules of his supervised release in not just one, but 3 ways. He was caught with a gun he wasn't meant to have, he hadn't paid his $500 monthly restitution, and he hadn't told his probation officer that his address changed. He was sent back to prison, but was allowed to serve some of his sentence under home confinement in 2020. Hopefully he's learned his lesson now, but that won't help his bank balance after he lost basically everything on legal fees and fines. The next player on this list didn't go to prison, but he did do something seriously stupid. Vince Young. Tennessee Titans player Vince Young was once nicknamed the Invincible. But while he may have been an invincible player, that wasn't true of his financial management skills. It's estimated he earned $35 million over his career, which is an impressive amount of cash. It seems impossible that someone could lose that much money. But Vince was the kind of rich person who spent a mind-blowing $15,000 on a single trip to the Cheesecake Factory. We don't know how that's possible. We would never have guessed there was $15,000 worth of food in one Cheesecake Factory branch at one time. But Vince was a special kind of big spender. We guess the staff just made sure to give him whatever he wanted, no matter what they had to do to make that happen. That's not even his only 5-figure dinner tab that he covered for an entourage over the years. And he didn't only blow his cash on food. He was also known for buying cars and other luxury items for friends and family. And he once bought every ticket on a plane just so he could have the whole thing to himself. His financial advisor and his manager, who was also his uncle, seemed to do nothing to stop him from blowing all his cash. Vince later admitted that he never even looked at his bank balance until after he retired. That was a pretty huge mistake. In 2014, he found out just how much he'd messed up when he was forced to file for bankruptcy. It turned out that, while he had about $500,000 in assets, he was a staggering $10 million in debt. Lucky for him, help was on the way. He earned a degree and got a great job as a broadcaster that meant he could slowly bail himself out of trouble. He has since managed to clear his debt, which we think is pretty impressive. The next person on our list didn't need to spend so much cash all the time. He blew it all on one mistake. Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar was the Cleveland Browns star quarterback for years. But while his football career glittered like gold, his career as an investor was far less impressive. He was one of the richest players in the NFL at the time, thanks to his $5 million contract with the Browns, and he earned an estimated $10 million over his career. That doesn't sound like a lot compared to what players earn today, but this was back when players never earned the huge paychecks they do now. And let's face it, that was a ton of cash in those days. But Bernie didn't just manage to lose it all, he lost more than twice as much as he ever earned. An expensive divorce, bad real estate decisions, and a failed investment in a steakhouse all added up to wipe out his bank balance and put him in debt. When he filed for bankruptcy, he owed $9 million to a bank for the real estate losses, $3 million to his ex, $1.5 million to the Cleveland Browns, and even more for personal loans. It all added up to an eye-watering $15 million in debt. You'd think it couldn't get any worse, but it did. Kosar discovered that his dad, who was also his financial manager, had been secretly using his money to pay off a mortgage and car without his permission. That's gotta hurt. He had just $44 in the bank when he filed for bankruptcy. We have no idea how he dug himself out of that hole. Andre Rison. Andre Rison was a player with the Green Bay Packers when they won the Super Bowl. Not a lot of players get to say that. But while his career was on a high, his financial management skills needed a lot of work. His big mistake was giving in to peer pressure. One reason so many retired football players go broke is because they try to outdo each other with their lavish expenses. Andre spent loads of cash giving into this spending culture. He was known to go out clubbing with a huge entourage, and he'd cover the entire bill at the end of the night. It sounds generous, but it wasn't smart, and you can bet half of the people there were just hanging around for the free drinks. It often cost him tens of thousands of dollars for just one night out. He bought sports cars and even admitted to spending a whopping $1 million just on jewelry. While he was paying for all that, he forgot he would eventually have to pay child support. That was what got him in the end. The payments stacked up so much that he was eventually forced to file for bankruptcy. Some sources claim he lost an incredible $19 million through his crazy spending habits. He threw away his life as a millionaire and now works as a high school football coach. That's a pretty big fall from the heights he reached as a Super Bowl winner, which is a feeling the next player on our list knows well. Clinton Portis. Clinton Portis had an incredible track run, with 80 touchdowns in his career. It's impressive, and he was paid very well for it, with a $50 million contract with the Redskins. But even with all that money, he ended up in some serious trouble. Way worse kind of trouble than most other players on this list. And sadly, it may not have even been his fault. He only made one mistake. He trusted the wrong people. Those people were two investment advisors. These weren't shady guys he'd just found. They were registered with the NFL Players Association. What could go wrong? A lot, it turns out. Eventually, they were caught in their shady dealings, but it was too late to save Portis's money. They'd invested loads of it in the wrong places, like $1.3 million, which they gave to a casino in Alabama that almost immediately went bust. Their mishandling of his money, combined with his own mistakes, added up to a staggering amount of debt that he owed to everyone from casinos to the IRS, and even $500,000 to his own mother. In total, Portis was $5 million in debt. He'd also gathered $400,000 of unpaid child support to 4 different women. But that wasn't all. His advisors had got him and several other players into trouble with the law, and in 2019, he was charged with committing healthcare fraud. The very next year, he was also charged with wire fraud. In 2022, he was sentenced to 6 months in prison and another 6 months of house arrest. Will he ever bounce back from all these problems? We'll just have to wait to find out. Mark Brunell. Celebrated quarterback Mark Brunell had an incredible run, playing for 19 seasons with multiple teams, including the Jacksonville Jaguars. When he finally retired, he'd earned a whopping $50 million. He probably thought he was set for life and could live out the rest of his days in his $9.5 million mega mansion in style, but that was a huge mistake. His house and all his other real estate investments lost him a ton of money when the housing market crashed in 2008. But that was only one of his problems. He'd spent another $9 million on a Whataburger franchise which failed. And despite having $5 million in assets, he was $24.8 million in debt. Luckily, he made one really good decision. Before he retired, he got himself a job in medical sales that earned him $60,000 per year. Sure, it's going to take a long time to clear the debt with a $60,000 annual income, but it's something. Luckily, in 2021, he was hired by the Detroit Lions as a coach. Hopefully, he's doing a little better now. But the next person on our list isn't so lucky. Chris McAllister. Cornerback Chris McAllister played for 11 seasons with teams like the Arizona Wildcats, Baltimore Ravens, and New Orleans Saints. His multi-million-dollar contracts were impressive and added up to an incredible $51.4 million over his career. That should have been enough to last him a lifetime, but just 2 years after he retired in 2009, he was in court. He was petitioning to get his $11,000 per month child support payments reduced. To do that, he needed to reveal his financial situation to the world, and it wasn't looking good. It turned out he was so broke, he'd been forced to move back in with his parents, and they were covering all of his monthly expenses. He was flat broke. There hasn't been much news since, but some sources still say he's $100,000 in debt today. Hopefully things get better for him soon. Dermontti Dawson is the highest-paid offensive lineman in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so you'd think it would be impossible for him to lose all his cash. But you'd be wrong. It was the 2008 housing market crash that really hurt him. He'd spent millions of dollars buying up property around the country, and it all dropped in value overnight. Those weren't his only assets. He owned $22,000 worth of guns and a very expensive Rolex watch, but even that didn't come close to covering the millions he'd lost. He already owed money on a 41-foot mobile home to make matters worse, and his son's college tuition was costing him a breathtaking $3,000 per month. You won't be surprised by this after what you've just heard, but he was forced to file for bankruptcy in 2010. You'll never guess how much money the court documents revealed he owed. He was just under an incredible $70 million in debt. Imagine owing more money than most people ever see across their lifetimes. Tell us what you thought of these huge losses in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe while you're there. You wouldn't want to miss more great videos like this one, and we post all of the time.